We're not wanting to just raise kids who can rattle off a bunch of information, impress people with a book list, but we're thinking we want them to believe what is true, to love the things that are good, and to desire the things that are lovely, to really to be raised in virtue and to be good humans as they grow into adulthood who love God and love their neighbor. I think it's so important that our theology, right, what we believe
Mhm.
about God, influence our anthropology, what we
Right.
believe about man.
Right.
And then, of course, those two things come together in our philosophy of education. So if you have a poor foundation, it's going to lead to some problems in your
Right.
educational approach too. Maybe this was just because I was extra sinful, but I was like, "Oh, wow, wow, my mother has really fallen short." And this idea, like, I'm gonna do things so differently with my children. And then really as the years went by and I started doing a little bit more research, not just reading modern books, but reading a wider range of ideas, I started to realize just how much the way my mom had approached our education, focusing on ideas, seeing the connection of subjects, um, really had been classical all along. This idea of culture, a story
Mhm.
of people,
Yeah.
is really at the core of the way I educate my kids. And so that is also something that's very easy to do across multiple ages and grades. And so I don't want to try to force the connections. I think if you try to force connections, a lot of times kids just zone out or it doesn't
Yeah.
really stick. But as we're just reading widely, reading about all these real people, real experiences, movements of culture, ideas, music, art, all those things as they intertwine together, those connections start being made almost without you realizing it. Another misconception I think would be that classical education is maybe a little bit snooty or just for people who want to impress other people with uh, their extensive knowledge or something like that.
Yeah.
And I think that that can be, I think that is a misconception because sometimes that is where our sin nature comes out, unfortunately, as classical educators. But I think a true understanding of Christian classical education actually drives us to humility. Yeah, we have to start with the end in mind, right? And we
Right.
want children who are wise. And the Bible clearly tells us that it's the fear of the Lord that's the beginning of
Yeah.
wisdom, right? Not just the accumulation
Right.
of lots of facts and knowledge that can just puff us up. Look how much I know. But the fear of the Lord, which is to realize he's creator and I'm creature,
That's right.
that is such an important aspect of this education adventure that we're on with our kids. We have the freedom as homeschool parents to figure out what's going to work best for
Yeah.
our unique children and our unique family. And it doesn't have to look just like anybody else's, whether you're a classical educator or not. And if anybody tells you there's only one way to do it right, I would
They're
steer clear of
lying.
that. Yeah. I sometimes say homeschooling is not a vending machine. We don't just punch in the right buttons and out comes this product. It's a
Yeah.
lot more complicated than that. And thank goodness that it is based on the work of the Spirit in our children, not our
Amen.
own. But with that huge preface, no, the answer is no. There's not just one way to Christian classically educate. In the finite time that I had, with finite amount of energy, I really wanted to prioritize things that were going to have an eternal value, a long lasting impact in my kids' hearts and minds. And I just wasn't convinced that a list of dates and facts was going to nurture their soul in 20 years, in 30 years. But memorizing Death Be Not Proud by John Donne would. Um, so we have actually focused on poetry, Shakespeare, scripture passages, some original source documents or speeches.
Mhm.
Those have been the things we have prioritized